Do it. Get it, girl.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
So if there is anybody that I've seen as consistently as just about anybody else over the last 2 weeks, walking around Tampa for SEC Media Days and now Chicago for Big Ten Media Days, it is one of the hardest working people in the business. It is Heather Dinich of ESPN, and what a pleasure getting to speak with you, Heather. Truly love the coverage that you provide. Eventually, we're going to get to the games. Eventually, the action on the field matters, but you've done such a great job of keeping people in the know with regards to the craziness of the current era of college football. Thank you so much for the time. How has these last 2 weeks been for you?
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the kind words,
Sure.
too. These last 2 weeks have been an absolute whirlwind, but I'm going to be completely honest. It's so good for my soul to talk about college football with players and coaches, because so much of it has just been the eyes glazed over about NIL and federal legislation, etc. So to be able to see Jeremiah Smith, to be able to see Arch Manning and actually interact with these guys it's been great. It's been very refreshing.
Those are some big humans.
Large.
Yeah.
And yet Jeremiah Smith has a baby face.
Yeah.
And Arch Manning kind of looks like my teenage son. I'm like, really, guys? So, yeah, the fact that they're just absolute wreckers on the field is very contrary to when they come in and they're just soft-spoken and very kind and just normal humans.
Was there something about this conference in particular that you found rattling around your brain more than the others as you were coming to Chicago this week?
You know, I don't necessarily think so. I think it's sort of the same big picture question as it was in Tampa, which is just the Big Ten's dominance in college football. I mean, that's what a lot of people are talking about. That's what I'm getting asked about on Get Up in the morning and our ESPN platforms. And, you know, just the fact that Tony Petitti, the commissioner, got up and spoke literally next to 3 national championship trophies from the college football playoff, it's pretty strong evidence about the Big Ten's place in the pecking order right now.
I'm not going to lie, that's a pretty impressive flex. As somebody who's a Longhorn fan and hopes to see my team raise that trophy this year, I had to FaceTime my kids and be like, hey, kids, guess what's around behind me right now? And they were impressed for the first time in about 6 months, too.
Well, I have Texas as my preseason number 1.
You do, yeah. That's been making the rounds on ESPN and elsewhere today. So what is it that you love about this Texas football team this year?
Well, I was not a believer in Texas last year. My dear friend and colleague, Paul Feinbaum, we know he loved Texas last year. I liked Penn State and Clemson, which was also a swing and a miss. So
I think everybody missed on Clemson last year.
Everybody missed on Clemson last year. But Sark has literally everything you could possibly need to compete for a national title this year. He made great use of the portal. I love the hire of Muschamp as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
When you look at the personnel on the field, I don't think it's a stretch to say Colin Simmons could be the best player in the SEC. I think he'll be the first player drafted on the Longhorns roster.
Wow.
So
over Arch even.
Yeah. I think that what he can do to disrupt opposing offenses I think he's going to take it to another level even. And then when you look at the portal that they use with Hollywood Smothers coming in and the ability to run the ball, the offensive line is going to be better. That was one of my biggest questions about last year. How is Arch in his first season as a starter supposed to win the Heisman when he's got 4 new guys in front of him? You know, look at the Florida game, and I talked to Sark about that extensively, and that game in particular, and he said we had a true freshman on the left side in that game, and it caused us a lot of problems. And they moved guys around, they have more experience. So when you combine all of those things, and the key, getting Ohio State at home, to me, is the catalyst for, okay, you can make a serious run. If you start 2-0, I think that's a statement for Texas.
And I feel like that they're catching Ohio State at the right time, too. Much like Ohio State caught Texas at the right time. If they played Ohio State in a playoff game, for instance, it would have been a much better, much different Texas team. But Ohio State, I mean, as a matter of sending so many different guys to the NFL over these last couple of years, especially on the defensive side of the ball, with what Matt Patricia wants to do, he's still having to break in some new faces, and they may not be all the way up to speed that second week in Austin.
A lot of new faces, yeah. And you think back to that game. I mean, Julian Sand and Arch were both starting their first games, basically. I mean, who knew what to expect? And it was a close game. It wasn't like a 33-7 game.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how different both of those teams are. But listen, My steady rule is when in doubt, go with the home team.
It's a pretty solid rule.
It's a pretty solid rule. And I think that game didn't keep Texas out of the playoff last year, as much as Sark wants to argue with me about that, and we respectfully do that every time we see each other.
No, that would have been the Florida game that kept them out of the playoff.
The Florida game and the close wins against Mississippi State and Kentucky, I think it was, right?
Very true, yeah.
So
overtime wins for both of those,
right, yeah.
And look, so the other thing about Texas, too, and I don't want to spend the entire time talking Texas, we're at Big Ten Media Days, is Sark has felt more focused this offseason, and he's also been shooting from the hip a little bit more when he's been talking to you and other members of the national media and not really pulling any punches with regards to the current state of things and what may need to be done for this all to be sustainable in the future.
Right, and don't forget about basket weaving. I mean, it's just been a great offseason for Texas. It's been really fun.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's been pretty candid about all of it, and I think that's refreshing as a reporter, but we'll see what happens. There are a lot of loaded teams here in the Big Ten, too. You could throw a dart of who's number one in the country preseason, really.
So Ohio State is probably one of those teams in your mind that has that argument. Do you consider them the best team in the Big Ten?
On paper, but, man, you can make a case for Oregon.
Yeah.
And I know there's Indiana fans out there going, wait a minute, what about us? But this is a really different looking Indiana team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had a project on ESPN.com not long ago where we had to name our top 10 coaches, and Curt Cignetti was my top coach. What he did last year was remarkable because he didn't do it with a roster that Sark has this year.
No.
He did it with some NFL draft picks. He did it with Fernando Mendoza, obviously. But we're talking about JMU transfers. Not a bunch of Colin Simmons, you know?
And by the way, even Fernando Mendoza, it's not like people looked at him as the number one overall pick heading into that season either.
Right. I mean, at this time a year ago, there were other quarterbacks in the country who had better numbers than Fernando. And I think the questions I have about Indiana are the fact that Fernando literally willed Indiana to some of those wins. I mean, the guts and the toughness and just the sheer will to win was on his shoulders that season. So I still have questions about IU, but Dante Moore is going to be one of, if not the best quarterback in the country, maybe. Oregon is loaded. Mm-hmm. And Dan Lanning's Instagram feed also saw me pick Ohio State over Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, which he let me know. And I was like, I thought you guys didn't pay attention to that stuff. He goes, I can't help what's in my feed. So I said, I will take full credit for the motivation when you win the Big Ten title.
That's the power that you have, is that your Instagram account gets coaches upset with you for picking somebody else. USC is another one of those teams, by the way, that it seems like there's a ton of potential there, in part because they've got that second-year starter at quarterback, the Lincoln Riley offense, and now Gary Patterson is trying to marry everything with what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball, too.
I am a believer in USC football. Yeah. I feel like I'm on an island when I say that, and my followers on social media let me know that, but I do believe that, again, with building a program to the point where it's ready, in talking to Lincoln over the past 4 years about his philosophy and his recruiting philosophy in the transfer portal, he's finally got that perfect mix of two really strong recruiting classes, developing talent, and guys in the portal who are going to help them compete at that next level. And their quarterback, Jaden Mayava, I don't know if you saw the USC players yesterday.
Yeah.
Those dudes are large, right? So there's legitimate talent on that roster, but I mean, you have to win the big games, and you've got to go across the country and win at Penn State. It's probably going to be their whiteout game. So there's not going to be anything easy for them.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions here, Heather. First off, I love your passion for college football. Where does that come from?
That's a great question. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, and probably about 3 hours from Penn State. So back in my day, you were either a Penn State or Notre Dame fan, and I remember our middle school teacher, dividing the class.
Oh, my gosh.
I, as a junior in high school, drove out to Notre Dame for Lou Holtz's last home game. And I sat in the wooden bleachers, and I thought I could get paid to do this. And that kind of started all of it.
Wow.
My dad went to Duquesne, my mom went to Bloomsburg, and I went to the worst football school in the world at the time, Indiana. So I don't really have any allegiance to a college.
Wait a second, you're an Indiana alum?
That's right.
Oh my gosh! Well, way to cover that whole thing last year very impartially.
Well, the fact that a lot of people don't know that, I feel like is a good thing. I was doing my job pretty well.
So, how much joy were you able to get out of the championship last year then?
That's kind of funny because my job in the press box on the day of the national championship was to write the game story on ESPN.com. That is the first thing you see as soon as that game is over. So as soon as the game ends, my story's up there as a placeholder until we get it. And I've got 2 Microsoft Word screens on my computer. One's with Indiana winning, one's with Miami winning. And the game's going down to the wire. And I've got like 90% of an Indiana story, and Miami starts to come back. And I'm like, holy shit, like the Miami might actually win this game. Oh my God. And so I'm freaking out about getting my story done and not thinking at all about the history that the school I went to is about to make. And then I went down on the field afterwards for the trophy celebration, and I saw people I hadn't seen in 20 years. And I was just like, people had tears in their eyes.
Yeah.
And it hit me at that time, but it didn't hit me as much until the spring when I went back to IU for the first time in like 25 years, and I saw how much things had changed, and just that was super emotional.
That's still really cool.
Thank you.
All right, last thing now. We're all here because we love football in some way, shape, or form. What do you love about football?
I love that even though we think we know the story, we never know how it's going to end.
See Clemson and Penn State and Texas in 2025.
We sit here, we think we know, it's going to be Texas or Ohio State. And, we're talking about all these schools. Who was talking about Indiana? There's such great stories. And I just love that every year is a different ending. No one could pick Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. I mean, you go back to App State, Michigan, and then you get to meet these players and these coaches, and there's a lot of really good people in this sport, and it's fun. So I love it.
The uncertainty is a great thing, and someone who does as good a job as anyone covering it all is Heather Dinich of ESPN. Heather, thank you so much for the time today. Like I said, I really, really enjoy what it is that you do, and I look forward to a whole lot more of that this season.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.